Why is it so hard to show love? The answer is easy and simple and hard all at once. Love is unreasonable and dangerous. It does not follow the rules. It asks us to be uncomfortable and vulnerable. It can cause us to behave the fool, and it can cause us to behave in ways we will later regret. Love can cause us to put ourselves in harm's way, and it can cause us to become as fierce as a mother bear. Now, as you are likely aware, or for those who are visiting, a vandal or vandals recently tore down our rainbow flag out by the road, and as well as some cameras off our building. Some of the cameras were mounted to the building and required a ladder to remove. And this has caused some anxiety, and I want to address that today. The language and images I will describe today may be uncomfortable for folks. If you need to tap out, take care of yourself, please leave the room, go chill in the library until you're able to return. Take care of yourself always and first. So I want to start with a story. When I was perhaps 21 or 22, I finally realized that I might not be heterosexual. It was a bit of a shock to me, but not to as many of my friends as I thought. So at that time, I identified as a lesbian. Once I got myself adjusted to this new reality and understanding of myself, I began to share the news about this piece of me with family and friends. And I got the mixed results one might expect in 1987. I was living and attending college then at the University of Maine at Farmington, in the western foothills of Maine, about an hour or so from the New Hampshire border. It was a lumber and paper mill kind of area, and Franklin County, where we were, had 2 traffic lights, both of which started blinking at 8 p.m. There were more registered handguns than Democrats in Franklin County at that time. And that's where and when I decided to come out of the closet. I challenged a lot of things back then. And when I chose to live out my authentic life, I found that some people no longer wanted to hang out with me. Some of those people were even gay, like me. They didn't want to be seen with me because they were afraid people would label them gay and be mean to them. Or their parents might cut off their support for tuition, or they might get beaten up. Those fears were real back then, and they haven't entirely gone away. I had more than one friend at that time who was beaten up, more than one lesbian who was gang raped in a perverse attempt to make her straight, or perhaps punish her for not wanting men, more likely. I had more than one friend who was cut off and disowned by their parents, leaving them homeless and penniless, with years left before they could graduate from college. I know several people who made truly farcical marriages in an effort to prove to their parents or perhaps themselves that they weren't really gay. It was a very painful time for a lot of folks. Me, my car was vandalized. The office of the student newspaper where I was the editor was defaced. When I organized a student group for gay, lesbian, and bisexual students and our allies, students and faculty alike tried to prevent us from getting funding. Our bulletin boards were torn down so often that the building and grounds staff eventually put plexiglass over our bulletin board so it would not be disturbed. People scrawled obscenities on the plexiglass. When we hosted a series of programs in what we called GLB Awareness Week, back then it was awareness, not pride, and we didn't know about the T, I put up and promptly lost around 1,800 signs on a campus with 2,100 students. In 1 week. I had my life threatened on television. I was soundly bawled out by the gay establishment for being too radical, for inviting drama. But I kept going. I didn't then, and I don't now, know how to back down, how to return to the closet, how to hide who I was, who I am. I was just a few years sober back then and learning how to be honest. I was working hard at it. And after being dishonest for most of my life before getting sober, this was another part of that process. I was working in my recovery to become rigorously honest with myself and others. And that meant not pretending to be something or someone I was not. It broke my heart when I would hold an event and see friends I knew to be gay walk hurriedly past with their eyes down, or worse, when I saw them in the jeering crowd, grinning with others. I did not think I was being particularly brave back then. I was just doing what seemed like needed to be done. People were being oppressed and hurt. I was one of those people, and it ought to stop. Nobody else seemed to be doing anything, so I started making noise. I didn't know what else to do. As a gift of my heritage, noise is something I'm good at. A few of those folks who walked past me back then have since reached out, decades later, to apologize for their actions in those moments. They were not in a place to be as brave as me, they told me. They were too scared. They were scared and ashamed and afraid of losing their friends and their whole world, the people who love them, the places they like to go, the people and places they were afraid would exclude or reject them if they knew that person was queer. It hurt to think of those times during those conversations, but I would always forgive them. Coming out is an intensely personal and vulnerable thing to do. I cannot know what they were going through internally or in their personal lives. As a universalist, I have to believe that people do the best they can, always. I do not understand, I did not then, and I sometimes still struggle, to understand the grip that family had on some of those friends. Perhaps one of the few gifts of the complex post-traumatic stress disorder I inherited from my own family. I broke from home at 17. I did not worry what my parents might think. I was already free. I was already alone. I had no one to answer to but myself. And lonely as that might have been, it was also freeing and empowering. Growing up, I remember my grandmother being always concerned what the neighbors might think, or what some family member might think. She never left the house without her hair done and her lipstick just right. But she was dead by the time I came out, and I'd broken with the rest of that dysfunctional bunch, so that was not a concern I had to carry. The person I had to worry about looked at me in the mirror every morning and every night. Was it an honest day? Was I mean to anyone? Is there anyone I need to apologize to? Was I hurt today? Did I hurt someone? Did I fail someone who needed me? Do I need to forgive someone? Is there someone I should ask forgiveness? Those were the questions I asked and still ask to measure my life. I do not worry what the neighbors think. I don't much care what the neighbors think, to be honest. Does that put me at risk? I suppose it does. Am I being brave? I don't particularly think so. There is justice that needs doing. It is within my capacity to make some progress, and so that's what I must do. Now, I don't have to go to every rally. I don't have to get arrested. I do what I can, when I can, for as long as I can, and know that that's going to be enough for today. Back in college, I remember meeting a new student as I was preparing to graduate. This young man had chosen the University of Maine at Farmington because of the news he'd seen about the LGBT positive things we'd been doing on campus. He knew that there would be room for him at UMF. He knew that he would not have to break a trail alone. That made me proud. But here's the confession portion of today's sermon. Years before I came out, back when I was still drinking, and I was trying very hard and very badly to be straight, I was really not good at it. I was a jerk. I was mean, and I was hateful, and I hurt people. There was a woman in my dormitory who was known to be a lesbian. I did not go near her. She terrified me, although I could not put words as to why. She was always friendly and polite, although a little shy, never offensive or aggressive. She started a student group for gay students and their allies. She got a bulletin board and put up signs. They read, "The Gay and Straight People's Alliance," the GASP Alliance. And I tore them down. I defaced the bulletin boards. I made her less welcome and more afraid. When she left Farmington, the student group failed without her leadership. Attending school in that small rural town where she was so isolated and targeted was too much. She left before getting her degree and went back to work in Portland, Maine's closest thing to a metropolitan city. The only town in Maine that had a lesbian bar. So years later, when I was starting up a student group, We created the student group building on the original name she'd given it. We called it then the Gay and Straight People's Political Alliance, the GASP Alliance. And she never knew that I was one of those vandals until decades later when I saw her at a gay pride event and I apologized. She forgave me with grace and compassion. So why am I telling you all of this when the Pride service isn't for a couple more weeks? I'm talking to you today about love and why it is so hard to show love to one another. When we love somebody, we hurt when they hurt. When we love each other, we want to protect each other. When we love our church community, this congregation, we want to protect it, to barricade it, to keep it safe. We want to eliminate all threats, anything that might represent a target for someone to aim at. And I understand that fear. I understand wanting to keep myself safe. And I'm here to tell you that you're allowed to be afraid. Yes, you are afraid. Afraid of being hurt, afraid of the building or our neighbors being hurt. And I'm going to tell you a hard truth right now. Most of you are safe. Most of you never have to worry about the things that I described. Those of you who are not, you know who you are, and this message is not for you. But for everyone else, you're not really at risk for danger or harm. You go about your business and don't worry about your house or your home or your job being targeted for violence. Some of us don't have that luxury, that level of privilege. You are allowed to be scared. What you are not allowed to do is to act on that fear in ways that abandon those who are at risk and who have no choice about that risk. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King told us during the most dangerous times of the civil rights movement that it was not the Klansmen so much that he feared as the progressive whites who were unwilling to have his back. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. This congregation is deeply proud of its building and what it stands for. The green technology here is a monument to the values of this group. And I want to talk to you about those values. Our values hold us to a moral imperative that we must fight for justice. We must support the marginalized, the targeted. We must seek truth wherever it leads us, even into uncomfortable places. When I was early in the interviewing process for this ministry, I was asked by the search committee, if we call a transgender minister, will we then all have to become evangelists for gender justice? The answer I gave at that time was probably offered in the interest of assuaging fears and anxiety. I minimized the role that members would have to play in this kind of justice work. But the accurate answer then and now is yes. Yes, you will. Yes, you must become evangelists for justice, for gender justice, for gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, and any other number of orientations, for all of it. When we love someone, when we commit to them, we commit ourselves to protecting them, defending them, to advocating on their behalf, even if sometimes that puts us at risk. We must become evangelists for those we love. We stop people from telling racist jokes, or homophobic jokes, or ableist jokes. And this is going to cost us. In the same way I lost friends back in college, this may cost us, we, you, friends now. It may cost you business if you are in business. I refuse to do business with someone who supports my oppressor, and I must expect others are going to refuse to do business with me because they see me as a godless heathen pervert. What we have to do is trust. We have to set forth on this journey with the faith of a saint in a coracle. What made them set out before the year 1000 with nothing between themselves and the sea but pieces of leather and lath? What made them certain of another place, uncharted and unseen, eating black bread and honeycomb, sheltering under hides? Their bodies were weathered, but their souls were transparent. The sea is a means, not an end. They trust in spite of the signs. These earliest pilgrims shared a cathedral for a heart. They were bound by the heart. They were the temple, not made with hands. The song that carried them over the waves was the hymn that rung the rafters. Their throats were bare for God. Love it was that drove them forth. Love that brought them home. Love hardened their hands against the oar and heated their sinews against the rain. The journeys they made were beyond common sense. Who leaves the hearth for the open sea, especially without a compass, especially in winter, especially alone? What you risk reveals what you value. In the presence of love, hearth and quest become one. So I'm going to ask you today, and this week, and this month, and here forward, what it is you love enough to take a risk to support it. What you risk reveals what you love. Our rainbow flag has been down almost 3 weeks. This is the first Sunday in a month celebrated globally as Gay Pride Month. I ask you this morning to live into our values, to lift up those who are unsafe, to support them, to risk a little bit of our own selves, our own comfort, and put the flag back up today. Every day people go by and see the flag not there. They think we have given up. They think the haters have won. They think that maybe we don't mean it when we say we are welcoming. Prophetic speech does not wait for when it is safe to speak. It is prophetic because it takes a risk. If we claim to want to offer prophetic speech for justice in this area, our job is to put the flag up now. If we are worried about harm coming to our building, then we take turns sitting out front like Atticus Finch outside the jailhouse, prepared to meet any ne'er-do-wells with a firm message of peace. I'm not asking you to be fearless. I'm asking you to rise above your fear. I'm not asking you for courage or bravery. I'm asking you to see what needs doing, set aside your own anxiety, and do it. If we are not willing to put up the rainbow flag until we feel safe, then let's be honest and just take it down. If we are not willing to put up the rainbow flag until we feel safe, if we are only willing to be brave until it gets scary for us, then we're not really willing to be brave at all. And while we're at it, we should probably take down the Black Lives Matter sign, because that is surely confrontational as well. If we don't have the courage to stand with our convictions, then those images are merely decorations there to make us feel good about ourselves. This congregation is brave. This congregation has done this work before. Through long, heartfelt discussions, you decided to put out the Black Lives Matter sign and to keep putting it out. And we're back here again with a rainbow flag, having the same argument. What you risk reveals what you value. And those who are most vulnerable among your membership, UUCSJS, those who are most vulnerable are watching closely to see what this collective group will do. Will we live into our values or not? What will you value? What will you risk? And this, friends, is why it is so hard to show love. It asks sacrifice of us. May we be up to the task. Amen.